Okay. Anybody who's out there, thanks for joining us today. My name's Martin Ferber, and I'm joined by my friend and fellow hypnotherapist, Lynn Bartle, who's over in East Yorkshire. We're just going to have a general chit chat about Pride, aren't we, Lynn?
We certainly are, Martin. Yes, it is Pride Month, isn't it?
It
The
is,
month,
yeah.
the month of June, which is well into now. Yeah, we're going to have a little chit chat while Pride's ongoing. I know that over here, Martin, our celebration of Pride is the 30th of July over in the west of Hull. There's a park there where everybody's gathering. It did start off out in Hull back in 2001, where there were just a few hundred, and it's now escalated and there's thousands joining.
Well,
So,
do they have a
uh,
parade, or is it just, yeah?
yeah, but it's going to be split into two. Is the day Saturday the 30th. There's going to be an event from 11 till I think it's 5 or 5:30. That's a free event, and then they're having a party in the evening from 6. And there's
Mm,
going to be I think it's Keith Duffy, Brian McFadden. They're going to be performing. That is a paid event. That's from 6 o'clock.
yeah.
Uh, 11:50 or something. So that's happening on the Saturday the 30th of July. So I know that's happening over here. I don't know what's happening over your way.
Right. Well, where I live in a town called Darwin, which the next biggest town to it is Blackburn. And we actually had our first Pride event here ever last Saturday over in Blackburn, which again, similar kind of thing. The daytime is like a family thing, for people to bring the kids to and enjoy the entertainment and everything. And then the evening, again, it's something that's usually sort of, based around a bar or a club or something. There's alcohol and tickets and an act involved. But it's funny you're talking about the dates because Manchester's Pride is at the end of August. It's always August bank holiday weekend. And as far as I'm aware, there are no plans to change that. I think the Pride Month thing of June started, perhaps, I'm not sure, started, I think, in America. And I sort of found its way over here. So we're making an entire month-long celebration of Pride, where employers join in, and just creating a general awareness and friendliness everywhere. But I think the places that have got the long-standing traditional dates elsewhere in the year are sticking with those.
Yeah, yeah. So, just let me ask you then, what's all the this new MX title that I've seen a few times, Martin? Can you explain that to me now? What does it represent? What is it?
Yeah, of course I will, Win. I know this is all the kind of thing you want to know about as well, don't you? Right. In the 70s, it first became fashionable for women to use the title MS, instead of Miss or Mrs. If they didn't want to generally declare their marital status. They could use it if they were single or they were married and nobody would know what their marital status was. These days, some people are comfortable having the title MX, so it doesn't define their gender as either a Mr., a Miss, or a Mrs. If they don't identify with any of those titles, they use MX, and it's what they're comfortable being addressed as.
And
And
how's it pronounced, Martin?
I always pronounce it Mux. But as I say, it's how people wish to be addressed, and as you know from therapy, the best way to treat people is how they wish to be treated.
That's right.
A lot of people make that common mistake of thinking the best way to treat people is as you'd like to be treated yourself. Well, that's not the case. You treat
Yeah.
people as they like to be treated. Yes, so that's where MX has come from.
And how's it changed then? How's Pride changed over the years then, Martin? From being kind of like a protest march,
Yeah,
uh,
well,
those streets in London back, in the 70s.
yeah, I can remember 1979 would have been my first one down in London. I was 15. And it was a protest march. The police would allow it, the council or whoever was responsible would allow it, but it was seen as a pain in the neck and something, they had to put up with. And it was a protest march. People wanted equal rights, they wanted equality. Um, and these marches were there to sort of bring general knowledge to the fact, that we were treated very, very differently. There was a lot of discrimination. You've got to remember, it was only the 1970s when sex discrimination came out, where women could be treated equally to men in terms of pay and everything else. I mean, you think back now, and it's like 50 years ago. We're going into that era.
Yeah, it is. It's scary, isn't
I
it?
don't know about you, it makes me feel ancient. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, the early marches down in London then, I mean, they were horrendous things. I mean, it was publicised to some degree, and then of course you'd have all the queer bashers, all the jeerers, everybody else coming along, you know, throwing bottles, spitting, this, that, and the other. The police would try and have the event not happen for, you know, for fear of trouble and one thing and another. Plus, you know, discrimination. But you know, thankfully things have come a long way. You know, let's
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
keep it positive and moving forwards, because that's what it's
Would you
all
think?
about.
Would you think then that you know, the homophobia? Let's talk about that word, phobia, homophobia. Seen as, you know, a lot of therapy is based around phobias and things. The homophobic. Do you think it has become much more antiquated? Do you think, you know, because people are more educated, they have more information now? You know, what's your thoughts about that, Martin?
Right. Well, with the younger generation, for example, say somebody who's, you know, generation, is it Z, round about the 20 mark, people who were born round about the millennium time, they are so much better informed now. And my impression with the ones I speak to, I've got family members in that age group and that kind of thing. They're far more clued up, they're far more accepting, and they are far less tolerant of homophobia, racism, and all that kind of thing. You know, they're very much clued up and very inclusive.
Yeah.
In terms of people of our generation, then certainly, I mean, you and I are a very similar age, and you can imagine what it was like for me going to school in that day and age, how things were. Again, thankfully, things have changed. I mean, if I go back to being 15 or 16, if I'd have told the teacher at school I was gay and having a problem, they'd have probably laughed at me and called me all the names under the sun. Whereas now somebody in a similar position will get help and support. You know,
Right.
things have come a long way. Things are a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that having been said, you know, there are still young gay men and women who will go to bed tonight thinking that they'd be better off dead than being gay. You know, there's still a lot of work to do. A lot of people
Yeah.
need help.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, gay people, or let's, you know, anybody who identifies under the pride flag do
Yeah.
suffer a lot more with mental health issues than the general population.
Yeah. 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 And suicide then, Martin, that was interesting. The article that I read, the percentage. Uh,
Yeah, suicide rate is much higher in the LGBT population than in the general population. I mean, just some facts and figures here. This is a survey based on the government's LGBT survey in 2018. LGBT people who've experienced anxiety in the last year, 53% of gay men, 72% of bi women.
mm-hmm.
What a difference in that.
Yeah.
You know, that there is still, as I say, there's still a lot of work to be done. Another survey, LGBT people who felt life was not worth living in the last year, 32% of gay men.
Right.
You know, that's 1 in 3 gay men thinking life isn't worth living. There's
Yeah.
still some serious issues out there that need addressing. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, things have come a long way, but there are still situations in workplaces,
Mm.
macho environments, traditionally macho environments where you've got the alpha male sales teams and that kind of thing. A colleague of mine who's does a podcast in the automotive industry, trying to, you know, bring sexuality out, that kind of thing, and help people deal with mental health issues in general. Again, you know, there's so much positivity happening, Lynn, so many things happening.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But you just feel that there's quite a lot more yet.
Yeah, you know, in therapy, we all sort of talk about a metaphorical stress bucket. You know,
Yeah.
when all our anxieties, fears, negative thoughts get
Yeah.
chucked into it. Generally in life, we go through life and, you know, we empty it each night when we go to sleep. But I always say there's a little bit left in the bottom of the bucket.
Right.
And we all carry that around with us. You don't necessarily need to go into how it's got there. But we all carry that around with us. And I think a lot of it with people who identify under the rainbow flag, it stems from early life bullying, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Guilt, shame, lack of self-acceptance. It
yeah,
all stays there in the bucket. So when we're exposed to other things as we get older, and that could be a trigger, somebody at work could be hostile to you because you're gay, and it can bring a lot of things flooding back.
mm,
Or you could even be faced with just, ordinary day-to-day things, which we all get from now and again, whether it's financial worries, redundancy, something going horribly wrong elsewhere in life. It might not be anything to do with sexuality, but if that stuff's at the bottom of the bucket and it's related to that, then it can bring it out more.
So what were
Um,
some of the things then? What were some of the things growing up for you in the 70s? What was it like for you being that teenager? What
uh,
do you have to put up with? What kind of things?
Yeah, well, I mean, I came out to my parents when I was 15 because I couldn't stand that double life, lies and deceit thing. It was every time, my dad would say, "Oh, have you got a bird yet?" That kind of thing. I could feel myself going bright red. I don't, it's not me to sit there just telling barefaced lies. And I didn't want to lead a double life. I was finding it really, really difficult to cope with
Yeah,
all these questions, and my feelings were all over the place. My hormones were all over the place. I found it really difficult to deal with. So I came out and told both my parents, which wasn't the best of experiences. First of all, my dad just like didn't want to know about it. Then he dragged me around to the doctors to get me fixed.
oh yeah,
Um,
I've heard that.
yeah, yeah. And the doctor told him not to be stupid, which was great. Yeah, my mum was sort of okay, but wished I wasn't. That's probably the best I can say about it. But again, we all grow, we all experience more as we get older, and we all, we can all change. I had a great relationship with my parents later in life, with both of them.
Right.
Um, I was never rejected outright,
So
but
what happened? Did they just become more educated, or how did they then become acceptant then of you, who you was, your true self?
I think I think with my mum it was, it was one of those things. She just got used to the idea and generally accepted it. With my dad, that was really strange because he worked in films and television all his life. He was surrounded by
Really?
gay people. He had gay friends. He was quite accepting of his friends, but not very accepting of me. Even as recently as sort of 15 years ago,
Right.
my other half, we've been together 26 years this year.
Brilliant.
My other half, who he absolutely thought the world of, would do anything for. If ever he was referring to me to other people, he wouldn't say Martin and his partner; he'd say Martin and his manager. He still found it difficult to say the words,
Yeah.
which I found it amusing in the end, to be quite
It's
honest
that
with you.
automated behaviour, isn't it, from them?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just an automated part of them, isn't it?
Yeah, and if I try and look at it from a positive angle,
Mm.
it was his way of trying to protect me from ridicule or what he perceived could be ridicule. That was his thing. Um, he was
Was
with
it
a.
protecting you then? Was it protecting you, or was it protecting him?
I think it was both. I think it was a little bit of both. Probably first and foremost protecting himself, yeah.
Right.
But also secondly protecting me. He didn't like the idea of people making fun of me or this, that, and the
Right.
other. That's what it was.
Yeah.
But getting back to the original question, what was it like for me? Well,
Mm.
where I grew up at school age at that time was a place called Lee in Lancashire,
Right.
um, which let me not be unkind. It wasn't the most cosmopolitan place in the world. Let's put it that way. I mean, I remember being called a puff at school because I took conditioner into the shower with me. Um, so that's the kind of place it was when I
Still do
was.
that, Martin? Do you still take the conditioner?
No, no, not these days. I don't really need it. But I left home as soon as I was 17. I couldn't wait to get away from the place.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I left with my parents' blessing, but I left home when I was 17. I moved over to Manchester, which by comparison was extremely cosmopolitan. Um, and I stayed sort of in and around there for most of my adult life. And then I've moved over, as I say, I live in a place called Darwin, which is an old traditional mill and mining town in Lancashire. Different thing altogether these days, even somewhere like here, which is pretty insular. I've never experienced any problem at all through being gay. That's,
No,
how much things have improved and changed.
that's good. Yeah. So it just shows you that, yeah, that we through the decades we have kind of moved on, haven't we? So what's we spoke about the title, and we've spoken about the what it was like growing up, etc. So as far as like therapy goes, then how do you, because my approach is that hypnotherapy isn't for just the rich and famous. It can be for anybody. It can be for anybody on the street. I think it's been seen as, oh, only rich people can afford it,
Mm.
which is absolutely rubbish, isn't it? But it's, the therapy side of things. What do you find people come to you with mainly, mostly?
If we're talking about people under the rainbow flag,
Yeah, under the
uh,
rainbow. Yeah,
yeah, most of the people come to me with issues relating to stress and anxiety.
yeah,
And as I say, the root cause of it usually is, that rubbish that's at the bottom of the stress bucket,
yeah,
that they've been carrying around with them for years. And it's mainly stress and anxiety. Occasionally, I get people really struggling with self acceptance as well. These are people
yeah.
who perhaps realized or began to come to terms with the fact that they're gay or bisexual later in life.
Mm,
And then, of course, we're dealing with issues of self acceptance and they need reassurance,
mm,
um,
mm.
which incidentally brings me on to something where you will be really helpful with this, Lynn.
Yeah,
Some gay people or some people who are coming out don't
right.
necessarily want to see a gay therapist.
True.
Yeah, because I know from speaking with various people, they prefer to see a straight therapist because they feel it's part of the greater acceptance, the general acceptance of, the general population.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's because you've had quite a few gay clients in the past,
Yeah,
haven't you?
yeah, it just by I don't advertise it as such. It is there, and at one point I did wonder why, but I can see now.
Mm,
Um, after speaking with yourself, I can see why.
mm,
And it's also interesting that, like you said, yeah, generally a lot of anxiety. Sometimes it is just that self-acceptance of, who they are. And it's about them being true, isn't it? About them being
mm,
true and happy, and allowing them to put themselves back in control. Because that's what they want to feel. They want to feel in control of this. A couple of persons that have been to me haven't actually come out, as you say
mm.
it, until during the therapy, even though that hasn't been an issue initially. Perhaps it's just been the anxiety, but then identified during the process of the therapy.
So they've seen you for like 3 or 4 sessions and then told you.
Yeah, a couple of sessions even, and then totally decided, because we all know that there's no better help than self-help and it coming
Mm,
from within. They've worked it out for themselves that they really needed to be open and honest about this, even being engaged, preparing to marry and organise his wedding, but deciding that he couldn't carry on
mm,
living and telling this lie in a way. He wasn't being true to himself,
mm,
and decided to come out and tell his family, tell his partner,
mm,
because he just felt that was the right thing to do. But that happened by accident, although it was obviously meant to happen because it was coming from within himself. He was being true
yeah.
to himself. That was very, very powerful.
Mm,
It was powerful to me, and it was powerful to him as well,
mm,
because he kind of felt like he'd been living this lie, and once he was open and honest about it, with his parents, his partner, the wedding was about a year away. He felt so much better. It was like a
mm.
weight had been lifted. That
It,
weight had been lifted. And he was
It,
just being true. He was just being true and honest, and he felt much happier,
mm,
a much happier person.
yeah, I mean that takes me back to what we were talking
Mm,
about earlier on when I just couldn't stand that sort of duplicity of
mm.
keeping it in the closet, keeping it
Yeah,
secret, one thing and another.
yeah,
It's a very, very stressful thing to do.
yeah,
And it can cause all kinds of
mm,
problems.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. Oh, brilliant, brilliant. I think another reason why you may have found people sort of tell you about the
Mm,
sexuality 3 or 4 sessions down the line is it's all to do with the most important thing of all being a therapist, isn't it? It's
that's
rapport
right.
and trust, and
Trust.
obviously they feel they can trust you.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So it is very, it's powerful, it's rewarding because knowing that you've helped someone
Mm,
identify the true self.
mm,
Like you say, they've been living, living that lie, living in the closet, whatever you want to call it, even to, a ripe old age of, late 20s or whatever. I don't know whether you class yourself as fortunate or not. You've been a much younger age at 15, but I suppose to
mm,
get to nearly double that age, you
mm,
know, and then for it to sort of dawn on you that you live in this lie,
mm,
um, it must be even more daunting, really. So even though someone might class it as being brave,
mm,
it's just that lift, isn't it? That anxiety, that feeling of, well, this is who I am.
mm. Yeah, I mean that first thing of when you've actually first done it and you've come out to those closest to you is a
Hmm.
wonderful feeling of getting it out of your system, getting it
Yeah,
out there in the open.
yeah,
The other part of that is though, as you go through life, you're continually coming out.
yeah,
Just in day-to-day situations, like for me going into a new barber's or something like that, and it's, are you
right,
married? Yeah. And then I say yeah to a fella, and you see that look of shock at first. And of course, in this
yeah,
day and age, people they're trying to do and say the right thing though, so
yeah,
that they'll be like, oh, and what does he do for a living? So then they continue the conversation normally.
yeah,
Um, and I don't try and do it for the shock factor or anything like that. But again, I won't tell lies. If somebody says, "Are you married?" I'm not going to say yeah to a woman, but I'm not.
yeah.
And I'm not going to say no and deny my very lovely husband.
And it's a bit like, I've already spoke about, the rich and famous as far as hypnotherapy goes, because
Mm,
people love to see it as a rich man's therapy. But talking about the rich and famous, of course, we've got many famous and rich people that have come out later in life,
mm.
haven't they? I know we've spoken about that before, but what an effect that it may have had on their careers, etc.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at George Michael, for
Mm,
example. If he'd have come out in the 80s when his career first started, it very probably wouldn't have got off the ground.
yeah.
As fantastic as he is or
Mm.
was, um, he was there as a teen heartthrob, a teen idol for all the girls to throw themselves at,
Yeah, it
and
was
he played the part. Let's face it, he
did,
played the part,
did.
didn't he?
Yeah, the Club Tropicana days, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And good luck to him. In those days, it would have been impossible for him to come out. His career would never have got off the ground. These
right.
days, it's much, much easier. We only have to look at, the last few weeks. Jake Daniels, the footballer, 17,
Sure.
coming out right at the start of his career. It could have been, career death sentence for him. Hopefully, it's not. He seems to have the support of his club, of his
Good.
association, and certainly of his family as well, which is brilliant. And let it be just the case. Yeah, he's a footballer who happens to be gay. So what? Get on with the game, and let's hope he doesn't get any hassle.
Yeah,
And let him be judged for his footballing.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then, I was thinking back to the days of Elton John. I can remember when he got married. Um, you
Which
know,
time?
of course, yeah, exactly. Was he being true to himself? What was he doing in those days when I can't remember who it was he did marry in the first place, but it was sort of, that hiding out bit, wasn't it? Again, he wasn't being true, was he?
No, no. I mean, he's tried to what do you call it? He's tried to sort of set the record straight and then lighten us all a bit more with the film he did, Rocket Man.
Yeah, true.
But what you can gather from that is most of the time up until the 90s, he was off his face on coke anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
anything would have been sort of seemed like a good idea at the time.
And he didn't have a particularly good childhood, did he?
No, he didn't. He didn't. And I think, you know, like a lot of people, we're all human beings. We all need love.
Mm,
You know, maybe because he was under the influence of drugs, which he freely talks about at the time, it seemed like a good idea.
mm.
You know, it's only later in life that he really fully came out. I mean, a lot of them go through this journey as well of, first of all, they say, "Oh, I'm bisexual." It's as if they're trying to soften the blow before they come out fully. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of Tom Daly, the diver.
Ah,
If
true.
you
Yeah.
remember the video he did a few years ago when he says, "Oh, I need to tell you I like guys as well as girls," and you know, I remember thinking then, "No, you're gay, pal." And now he's, you know, he's married to a husband. They've got children, haven't they? They've got one. Is it one or two?
Yeah, I think it's two. So generally then, is it true to say that a gay will always identify another gay? So,
Um, Most of the time, yeah, it's like an inner sort of sixth sense that we've got. And again, I think that stems back to the days of perhaps when it was illegal and
right,
frowned upon. You needed to have this instinct to know if you were in with a chance in the first place.
yeah. I mean, I know from a personal perspective, quite a few years ago now, um, going out among the gay community, and it felt the safest place to be.
Frequently is. Frequently is.
We said, there was maybe 3 or 4 couples went out, perhaps, 6 or 8 of us, and the places that we used to vacate, we felt the safest in
Mm,
and among. But everybody knew where we were going, what we were doing, and we weren't going there to make fun of anybody or anything like. We genuinely did feel
mm.
safe in their company.
Yeah. Well, you know, big generalizations, there's usually a lot less trouble in gay venues than straight ones. Certainly in my experience during my time when I was out there, nightclubbing and one thing and another.
Absolutely, I would imagine that there is
Mm,
a lot less trouble. That it is a safe environment to be in, really.
mm.
So, how would you like to see the future then, Martin?
Okay, well,
What?
from my point of view, Lynn, you know, because I've heard it said a few times this month, why do we still need gay pride? You know, why don't we have a straight pride, this, that, and the other? Okay, until such a time that it's not illegal in 70 plus countries to be gay, and until such a time there is no longer a death penalty in still 11 countries in this world where you can be put to death for being gay, then we still need pride. We still need to kick up a stink. We still need to raise awareness of it internationally and
Right,
get these things sorted. Until that time, there'll always be a need for pride.
right.
Yeah, I think that would be a brilliant note for us to wrap up on, actually, then, because
Yeah.
we're nearly out of time.
Martin.
um,
Great, hasn't it? It's been great, and we've probably not covered all and everything that we probably meant to. But yeah, it's nice to have this general chat, and me just being a straight female with children, grandchildren, speaking to you. How does that, does that impact on the community at all? Does that ever have an impact? Children. Does that ever come into the equation with?
well, not for my generation because I'm a bit too old to adopt now. Excuse me, but that's something brilliant that's happened over the last few years. You know, equal rights in terms of adoption and this, that, and the other. And the amount of married gay couples you see now who've adopted children, who can have children, it's great. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic. Those kind of things are really heartwarming. As I say, time's progressed on. My generation had it a lot easier than the ones, say, 20 years older, whom it was illegal to even be gay. And this generation have got it easier, and long may it continue, basically. But in terms of more acceptance, more inclusion, and everything, yeah, it's great. Take your kids to Pride, take your grandkids to Pride, join in. Leave the adult stuff for the evenings when everybody wants to go out and have a drink and a good bop and whatever. But let's include everybody. That's sort of my final thoughts on it.
It's been great anyway, Martin. It's been great having the catch up and having this chat. And let's hope that all these events that are going ahead, everybody gets good weather for them because predominantly they're outdoors, aren't they?
Yeah.
So that on those dates that are about to go ahead, they have really good weather for. and just keep the flag flying.
Absolutely. Brilliant. We'll catch up again soon, Lynn. Cheers.
You take care, Martin.
See you.
Bye
Bye-bye. Bye.
bye.